I was born during the Depression years. I was always interested in things that were sick, things that were hurting.
At Girl Scout camp in 1943, I met many Girl Scouts, one of whom was Florence Neal. From the beginning, it was a good relationship.
Florence Cooper has always been a live wire. She's as full of energy now as she was then.
I saw this book and it said hematology. I learned that's what it said years later, but I didn't know what the word said. But I pulled it down and I saw anemia. And I turned to a sickle cell anemia. And it said that it was found in colored people, that you were born with it, there wasn't no cure, and you died young. I could not forget that, and it stuck with me. Well, after I finished Virginia Union, I decided I'd go to medical technology school. And when we got to hematology, there was sickle cell. Again, very little information about sickle cell. By this time, many people in Richmond said, what is she talking about? She's always talking about sickle cell.
I had heard Florence on many occasions talk about sickle cell.
Wherever I went, it ended up with a conversation about sickle cell anemia. Well, it wasn't until maybe 1967, 68, a doctor came to MCV as a professor in hematology, and he was interested in sickle cell anemia.
There was a job available with a young doctor that had just come from New York in the area of hematology, Dr. Robert B. Scott. I applied for it and I got it. He had this interest in sickle cell anemia.
In the clinic, we saw a lot of patients with sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell is unique in that it causes the cells to be more rigid. When they lose their oxygen, they tend to form strange shapes, some that look like a sickle. These sickle cells can plug up blood vessels, and there are episodes of serious painful crises. The patient feels pain in the bones, chest, and it's very severe. My research technologist was Laverne Cooper, who helped me for 17 years. Laverne set up the test for the sickle cell trait and sickle cell anemia, and we decided that the thing to do was to educate people about this, because we found that less than 5 in 10 Black Americans in Richmond knew about sickle cell anemia.
I knew that Florence was interested in sickle cell, and so I let him know that, and that's how the two of them met.
I came down and met Dr. Scott. At this time, well, nobody was really talking about sickle cell, but I began to designate different organizations that I felt we needed to target and get into their midst to talk about sickle cell.
Florence had a lot of initiative of her own. She was fearless.
We went to numerous churches. Out of every 10th person interviewed, only 3 had ever heard of sickle cell anemia. So we knew that there was a lot to be done. We did a health fair at Gilpin Court. We did a screening and passed out literature, and that was the first large screening program and education endeavor that we tried within the city.
She took charge of it in her usual way and made it into a rapidly growing screening program, education program for those who had sickle cell trait.
People did not know that it had to be 2 people, 2 healthy, normal people with sickle cell trait to produce a child with sickle cell anemia.
It was hard to get young people to understand, if you are tested and find that you have sickle cell trait, then you need to, when you get in a relationship, then you need to find out about your mate, whether the mate has sickle cell trait. The only way you're going to have a child with sickle cell anemia is that both of the parents have the trait.
If they have children, there's a 1 in 4 chance with any pregnancy that a child will be born with sickle cell anemia.
During this time, Dr. Scott met with the superintendent of schools, and we were able to negotiate with them to go into every middle and high school with parental consent to provide testing.
We started testing thousands of people and finding people with not only sickle cell trait, but some unusual variants of sickle cell anemia. So I wrote an article for the Journal of the American Medical Association, which was entitled Healthcare Priority and Sickle Cell Anemia. The conclusion was that the priority was very low and needed to be changed. And that and an editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine, which I was asked to write, made this point very well known throughout the country.
We're doing TV shows. Everybody's excited. Everybody's excited about sickle cell. Now, we did run into some difficulties in the counties, and this was just beginning to bust and to integrate the schools. And one particular school wanted to just educate the African American children. And I told them we couldn't do that. I said, because everyone needs to know about one another. And if they're going to be a part of the school and you're going to have an integrated situation, they need to know.
Florence was very good at facing resistance. And I think just her personality. She was so passionate about it that before she would even think, she'd write back at you with an answer.
There was some resistance. Some people felt they embarrassed by sickle cell disease and felt that someone might consider African Americans less healthy because of that.
It wasn't popular to do that then. In particular, perhaps at a school, at that time, almost all white medical school. He was willing to take the chance. He was willing to take the resistance. He was willing to take the time and whatever it took to really get this thing brought to light.
I had some rather difficult times with some of my physician colleagues in the black community who initially thought I was doing something that was detrimental by publicizing it. I thought the more you publicize it, the better you get treatment and recognition of a problem.
Well, in 1971, Dr. Scott called me and he said, you know what? I just found out that there's a referendum out and there are going to be grant proposals going out that they're thinking about a National Sickle Cell Disease Act. So Dr. Scott wrote the grant, and on May 22nd, President Nixon signed into law the National Sickle Cell Anemia Control Act.
I shall soon send to the Congress a special message proposing a new program of federal partnership in technological research and development with federal incentives to increase private research, federally supported research on projects designed to improve our everyday lives.
In the operation of it, it was going to be clinics, centers, and research hospitals or universities. And VASCAP was one of the original 19 federally funded clinics.
Certainly when we got funded to start a program, that was a great boost that kept us going for a long time.
So now we are really in business. I left the job, came to MCV, and we began to reach out.
It was almost like a snowball. It starts very small, but it just slowly gets to be very big. We had people to get on the bandwagon with us, like Clarence Towns Jr., and then Douglas Wilder, whom we had gone to school with.
At that time, L. Douglas Wilder was a senator.
I met Florence Neal in high school. Florence is never going to go into a battle alone. She's going to make certain that you're going to be there with her. And she will stay right on top of you, but she's not going to give up on anything. I was prodded to be more active with involvement in sickle cell by Florence. She said to me that she needed help. She needed legislative help because sickle cell was not included in the state health care plans. And so the more I found out about it, the thing that impressed me was the inequity of it not being included in the state health care coverage plan for state employees. And she said, can we change that? I said, oh yeah, we can change that. We need to put the bill in, and I did. I had her to provide the people to come to testify for the passage of the bill.
Sure enough, got sickle cell added to that whole battery of tests that the state would pay for. That was the first big thing that we did, and we got that in too.
When I started talking about legislative accomplishments, one of the first things I always would mention would be sickle cell anemia being included in the state health care plan.
It is a story. It's a journey that I took, a God-sent journey, and I have never regretted it.
Dr. Scott, it was his dream, but with Florence's passion, what he had to offer and what she had to offer, those two things that seemed to gel. And it just turned out to be a very good relationship with them, as well as much progress.
I'm very proud of the work that I did and that Laverne and Florence did. It was one highlight of my career. When we started, the life expectancy of a sickle cell anemia patient was 20 years. Now, 40 years later, the life expectancy is 40 or more.
They decided to name a professorship in sickle cell research in my name, which I was very humble and grateful. It's an amazing journey, and it has been one, and it still is one. And I just want to see us raise this money and see that this research is just moves on, and one day we can say, well, we have cured sickle cell anemia.